Hi everyone, today is September 23rd, 2018, and this is the Duel Assessment, your podcast for Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links. My name is Green Ranger.
And I'm Deck Tech.
And there's been a whole flurry of news. We've officially got word that 5Ds is going to drop in a couple days, 2 days, in Tuesday, September 25th. And there's a bunch of other news going on. New cards are going to come, 2 sets of new cards. And along with all the new characters we're getting, and all their new cards, so
and skills, lots of new stuff.
And skills, right? We have to learn how to play synchros in between, and it's gonna be a whole new world. We're so excited for it. Deck Tech, where are you this week?
I finished up the Yubel event eventually. It felt like a really long event.
Yeah,
but we finally got there. I'd still like to hit King of Games if I can, and even if possible, although at this point it's seeming not so likely, unless maybe after we record I'll sit down and do a really just long dedicated session, but I'd like to hit King of Games maybe before the new stuff comes so that I could just play around with weird new stuff, but I'm only getting a few games in each day. I've been busy with some other stuff, and so it's been slow going. Some of that other stuff was that my family had a yard sale yesterday, and I was pretty much just the whole day spent working on that, setting it up, working it for the whole day, and then tearing it down at the end. So, we made a few bucks, so that's good.
Always good.
Yeah. How about you? Where are you at?
Well, I did hit King of Games, as I announced on Twitter. I hit it in the middle of the week. I'm going to talk about it a bit later, but it is with vampires. So if you want to hear how I got it with vampires, you can listen later on in the show. I could talk about some of the psychology that went behind it, like what I did to control myself when I lost a lot of games. And talk about the deck itself, since I changed it 2 times. And the final list itself changed from a BLS to a Jinzo vampire. So I'll talk about all that. In the Yubel event, yeah, it took me a really long time to get a full play set. I think I went into 6.5 million points before I got 3 of everything. So I'm finally done with that.
Yeah, I don't know how deep it took me. It felt like it wasn't super bad, but just really long to me, because especially since they metered it out. I know that I got everything besides the final form of Yubel before the final form was released. So that felt like I was kind of just waiting for the event to catch up with me and to allow me to finish it, which is kind of an interesting thing. But
yeah, I only had 2 of each of these cards. I think the Grave Squirmer and another one. I only had 2. And then one game I got them all, so I got them both in the same reward. So I was finally done, but I was in 6 million something already. So
well, better late than never, I guess.
Yeah.
I ended up with 8 Yubels.
I got the roses, a ton of roses, and Samsara lotuses.
That's funny. That's the last one. Those 2 were the last 2 for me. The ones that I was kind of waiting on for a couple days.
Nope. I was waiting on the rose. I got 8 Samsara lotus. I think that's the only one I got a ton of.
Yeah. Anyway.
Alright. We're going to talk about this week in esports. One tournament, the Duel Links Meta Weekly 38. This happened on the 19th. And, this is the last list. They might take a break. I don't know if they'll take a break. But I assume synchros are going to be in some capacity. It's possible they're not good enough for these tournaments next week, but I assume they will creep in some way. People will force them in. And this is going to be the last of this Vampire Amazoness meta.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good call. If I were the people organizing events over there at Duel Links Meta, I would definitely have an event, because even though the meta is totally unknown, people are really interested in finding out how the best players navigate an unknown meta. It's kind of like a big debate as to which format is better for major tournaments in things like Hearthstone and Magic and whatever, where they have a pro series, and then those really big tournaments, at least back when I followed Magic more closely and played Magic, they had the really big tournaments at the launch of the sets. And so it was like, this is your chance to see what the pros can do with all this new information, untested, and all of that. And it's really hype. It gets people really excited about the new set. It gets people really interested in the content because they can check it out and see, what these genius pros came up with, stuff that the average player would never have thought of, and all of that. Cards that are better and worse than expected, and that's really cool. And then the flip side is how Hearthstone tends to do it, where the big events are at the very end of a meta, which, as a viewer, has the upside that you're watching kind of like the best players play with the best decks, and everyone knows what's going on, and so there's no like surprise factor or anything like that. You're pretty much just watching the best plays. Whereas if you do it at the beginning of a meta, then you get to see the surprises and everything. So the downside of doing it at the end is that maybe it seems a little stale because it's the meta set and it's the same stuff that people have been seeing the whole time. But the upside is that you really get to highlight player skill over clever deck building, as we call it here. So since this isn't an official major tournament series, they might as well, right? They could do it at both points. So I hope they do. It'd be interesting to see what people come up with.
Yeah, this is some weird one. It's not like either game where you come in with intel from the TCG.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird, and what they allow from the TCG, so it's like some weird view.
Yeah,
but
insider trading.
Yeah. Yep. So, let's talk about the deck. Skill Shot, first place, Sealed Tombs, Amazonas, Cyber-Style Vampires, with a lot of BLS. The Sealed Tombs Amazonas has an Amazonas trainee, which I assume its ability counters vampires because it sends them back to the deck. So I guess that's why that is there. And then the vampire deck is very unusual. Usually you only have one of these BLSs if you do at all. There's three. And there's 3 Cosmic Cyclones, which is a card you typically don't even run at all. So it seems like a very one-turn kill, let's get my BLS in the first turn type of deck.
Yeah, it's also 24 cards, which is kind of pushing it a little bit, but that's interesting. Since I'm the Amazonas guy, just to quickly note, you're right. The Amazonas trainee is a little weird. It sends things to the bottom of the deck and then gets buffer over time, but it seems like you would only want to send stuff to the bottom of the deck if you don't have the Onslaught out. And obviously the whole deck is based around Onslaught. So he was really expecting a lot of people to be targeting the Onslaught, I think. Because naturally drawing, you have 5, with the princesses, 5 Onslaughts and only 1 of the trainee. So you would never just naturally drawing it expect to have the trainee before the Onslaught. So this is just like, if they destroy my Onslaughts, I still have a way to disrupt them and keep stuff out of the graveyard. So it's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Irving, second place, Sealed Tombs, Masked Heroes, and Bandit Vampires. So this is kind of the last time we're seeing offerings to the Doomed, like the last type of deck that we see it in, I think. It's a card that went away for a very long time. I think it's just because it's still a reprint card. It's not been officially released in a main box yet. So, there's that. And Bandit Vampires. Bandit is a skill you typically don't use, but they lose enough life that you could just use it and steal whatever your opponent uses. So, there it is.
Yeah, these are both the clean list, 20 cards. Seems like he has a pretty clear idea of what he wants to be doing, so that's pretty cool. The story of, I think, this current meta is definitely the Sealed Tomb skill. It's good against the top meta contenders of vampires and against the new hotness of Yubel, and it has a little bit of splash value against other top decks as well. So it's just a really solid skill that's gotten a huge uptick in usage. And you could see it here. You could see it in most of these lineups, I think. Definitely first place. Not that one. So, all right.
Prey Sick, third place. Mystic Depths, Fur Hires, and Endless Trap Hell, Amazonas. This Fur Hire deck, I remember when it first came out, it was very annoying. And I'm glad it didn't really take off. It kind of stagnated, I guess. And, And then the Endless Trap Hell of Amazoness. This guy likes using his Galaxy Cyclones, which are a good call against Amazoness and vampires, I think.
Yeah, and anything that's good against Amazoness and vampires is just good in the tournament meta because those are the two most popular decks, at least up until this point when we get the 5Ds. We'll see how things shake out, but any calls that have that value against both of the top decks, it's just a good meta call. I totally agree, though, that I'm glad that this for hires thing did not take off. I do still see it a decent amount on the ladder in those games that I've been playing, but I think that's just because it's the ladder and people don't have like a ton of options. They go with the deck that they already have built and know and modify it if they can to keep playing it.
Yeah. All the fur hires I saw in the end were just tie that binds. Not this one, so that's what I haven't seen it in a while.
Yeah, I think you're right. I haven't seen it in a bit either.
And March, third place, Cyber Style Vampires and Sealed Tombs Amazoness. This is a vampire list that's 21 cards. Nothing really special about it. There's no BLS, no Jinzo. It's just a vampire list with 21 cards. And then the Sealed Tombs Amazoness. This one has some Galaxy Cyclones, nothing else too remarkable.
Yeah, it looks very close to Cray 6 list, except with a different skill, which is pretty interesting. The other difference is that it has two Treacherous Trap Hole in place of two Wall of D in Cray 6, and that's because Cray 6 has two Treacherous Trap Hole in his for hires list. So he could have only put one, but instead he decided to kind of go with the consistency of the two Wall of D. So it's interesting to see kind of these two players on a very similar page.
I completely forgot that they had to share cards.
Yeah, so that's why you can see like three of the Galaxy Cyclone, Cray 6, and yeah.
Why Econ's only in one deck sometimes. Alright, so that's it. Big news, of course, 5Ds is coming out on Tuesday, September 25th. And we are getting some goodies. We're getting a dream ticket. This is something that I've clamored for when we were talking about I want my gems. Or I forgot what it was called, the movement.
Mm-hmm.
I was saying we should give, these dream tickets. They were so good. But this is our second dream ticket ever, I think. We got one. I forgot when the first one was. It was last year, I think, sometime. So, 1,000 gems and also a Junk Warrior.
Yeah, and for the people who don't remember, the Dream Ticket was, at least last time, it allowed us to get one from like the first 10 sets. One card of our choice of whatever rarity the Dream Ticket was. And that's really cool because we've always talked about how the price of individual cards is really high in this game because there is no way to get individual cards from the boxes except for these Dream Tickets. And so what you have to do is you end up buying like 200 packs just to get one card, or if you need a whole play set, then you're in big trouble because then it's like you need to buy whatever 400 packs. So it's much better if you can kind of get the one that you need without needing to buy all those packs, or kind of help round out your play sets more efficiently with the Dream Tickets. I'm a huge fan of the Dream Tickets. Like you, I was hoping that they would kind of become a bigger part of the game when we were all kind of complaining about the cost of the game. It would have been really cool, I think, if they had made it something that you could get at the trader, for instance, so that you could kind of more easily trade in some value to kind of fill out your collection. But it seems like they're still not really wanting us to go that way, so oh well.
And we are getting a Junk Warrior, which is a free synchro. Let's talk about the Junk Warrior. Level 5 Dark Warrior synchro. You have to create it with Junk Synchron and another non-tuner monster. So the Junk Synchron is the tuner. If this card is synchro summoned, it gains attack equal to the total attack of all level 2 or lower monsters you currently control. 2300, 1300. Basically, you're using 2 cards to make a 23, and based on whatever level 2s are on the board, or level 1s, it gains its attack. So, you can make it a beat stick with a Chaos Necromancer, something that multiplies its attack. It's just a big beat stick, is all. A situational beat stick.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like that Chaos Necromancer thing. The thing to note is that since we only have 3 monster zones, you're probably only going to buff 1, right? To do the synchro summons, and again, I only know this from having read up on it, not played it. They have to be on the board, right?
Right, so then there might be one guy on the board.
Yeah.
And then you might summon another one. That's when you have a full board. But normally it'll just be like one, if any, guy on the board.
Oh, I see. This is a static thing that this guy gets buffs. Where's this card? For some reason...
it's static, yeah.
Okay,
static, yeah.
Yeah, for some reason I was thinking it's when he's summoned, so you could only have 1. But you're right. Sorry. You can have 2 buffs. Okay.
Not too exciting, I think, but...
Yeah.
Free. That's all that matters.
Yeah, free's cool. Level 5 is lower than any of the other ones that we have here.
It's a cheap one, yeah.
Yeah, in this, spoiler list that we're going to get to, so that's cool too. It might just be worth it because it's easier to do than the other ones.
We're not getting all our characters. Tetsu, Trudge, and Jack Atlas will have to wait. So we are getting Yusei, Crow Hogan, Akiza, Luna, and Leo. So the other guys are coming later.
Yeah, I remember when GX came, Crowler came slightly later, but now...
Cyrus wasn't in the game in a while, yeah.
Yeah, Cyrus wasn't for a while, that's true. And then obviously, what's the edgy guy's name? We didn't get him till just recently.
Vayne, yeah.
Vayne, yeah. So, yeah, I guess they're kind of saving a few to give throughout the year, as they have done with the other worlds.
And we're still getting other guys from those worlds too, hint, hint.
Ooh.
DM and GX. Some characters are coming down the pipe. Some we've seen, so you kind of assume who I'm talking about. But another guy who rides a motorcycle. Yeah. But another important note about 5Ds is that the characters we are getting will currently cap out at level 30.
Yeah, this is interesting just because it's weird that your worlds will have kind of different level caps. But people were also, complaining that it's going to limit their overall gems. And my answer to that is just, like, how much are you playing and grinding, and how quickly do you expect to grow those levels that you think it will be a huge issue? I'm usually one of the first people to cap one of all my character levels, and I used to do it routinely before they upped the caps, but the recent cap has been really hard to get to. I'm only like halfway done, maybe. We have 2 characters that we just fairly recently got, so those ones aren't even close yet. They're not even to 30, and then a lot of mine are still at the 40 that they were at the last cap. So if we add, like 5 more characters that are going to need 30 levels, and then plus the ones we already have, I think that we're going to have a good amount of time before it matters that, that cap is a little bit lower.
I think another reason why these characters are restrained is because they might give synchros, and they're trying to test the power level of them, and it makes sense to hold them back, to not give, to set the rewards right away, if you don't know how good synchros are going to be in this game.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I like that a lot. It is likely that they have some sort of ultimate monster coming, synchros and stuff, down in those later levels, and they just want to make sure that they're not going to destroy the game, and they can kind of anticipate it if so, and change up those rewards maybe. So yeah. It's a good read.
Okay, so we are going to get these characters on Tuesday, assuming nothing goes wrong.
Fingers crossed.
Yep. The world doesn't end, and the game continues to exist. Those are the two contingencies. Yeah.
I think we're safe, but
Yeah.
we'll see.
Also coming on Tuesday is a new main box. I think it's called Stardust Acceleration. That's the unofficial name of it. And also a new structure deck. Um, as is normal, they give, there are weeks where we get, like 3 new trader cards. And then this next week's going to be huge. Where we get cards from the characters, cards from a main box, which is like 100 cards approximately, and then a new structure deck. This does not appear to be one of those structure decks where you have to pay money, like an EX structure deck, like a regular one where you could buy one with gems, I think.
Yeah, we'll see. And like you said, it's going to be anarchy. There's going to be just new cards everywhere. The meta is going to be all thrown. People are going to want to play the new cards, and rightly so. Of course, it's exciting. It's always new card hype. So if you, like me, haven't yet hit your goals and you prefer to play in kind of a settled meta, then you want to grind out as many games as you can now. If you like to abuse a squishy meta, which I also sometimes enjoy doing, where it's unknown and maybe you can get away with playing something that's not quite as refined because everyone else's decks are also not quite as refined, that can be fun too. So that's kind of a consideration you can do if you want to play before or after all these new cards come to get out your PvP wins and stuff.
It'll be a week of mayhem. That's all we can guarantee.
It definitely will be, and you know what? We will all be going fast.
Yep. I'm glad I have gems. I got like 200 for King of Games, and they're just sitting in my box, and I have the max, so I'm ready to go in.
Yeah, you're pumped up and ready to go because you bought the box before the most recent one.
Vampire
right?
box, yeah.
Yeah, and I bought the most recent box, so I'm not quite there, but I also didn't buy through a ton of times, so I'm still doing pretty well. I have like 6,000-ish gems, 6,700 maybe, something like that. So, anyway, we're doing okay, and I'm definitely going to be. I mean, we're getting some as well, 1,000. Maybe more. I'm not sure if the 1,000 is everything that we get for that day because we always get like 500 and there's like new event hype and stuff. So I don't know.
Dual School.
Oh yeah, the Duel School will get some there. So
they might give us 50 for like a delay for an hour when we were asleep. That always happens.
Yeah, that's always nice too.
All right, so we're gonna wrap up Yubel. And Deck Tech has been playing the new Yubel deck, I believe. And there is a new deck out. There's the Nephis deck. I think that's what is going to be discussed. But there's also other decks. But Yubel is all the rage. What is the Yubel deck?
Yeah, so the one that I have seen the most and that I'm going to talk about is definitely the Phoenix Nephis one. It is a decent enough card that you can kind of just play it in other stuff as well. But the Phoenix has really strong synergies because the Fire King Island is destroy effects from either your hand or the field. And so it helps you start the Yubel chain. It also helps you keep it going. Once your Phoenix comes back, destroys your whole board, that gets you the next form of Yubel. And so what happens is you can... Okay, yeah, I was just making sure. The Fire King Avatar Yaksha also helps destroy. I've played it a little bit, but I decided I wanted to gain PvP rank, so I only played it a little bit, and then I put it down to play something I know a little bit better. But I know, in playing it and playing against it, I know how it works. The plan is definitely what you want to do is get your Phoenix going and your Yubel going at the same time if you can, and obviously as quickly as possible between the two. And then what that results in is a cycle whereby the Phoenix comes by every turn, destroys your opponent's back row, and then gets to attack. And then Yubel, depending on if they have monsters out or whatever, it can attack, and sometimes that's relevant. And anything you summon, so your Fire King or something, can attack as well. And then Yubel destroys the board, which destroys the Phoenix, sends it back to the graveyard so you could do it again the next turn. And so when both of them are out, you have kind of a soft lock, as they call it, where your opponent can't really play monsters because they can't attack into Yubel either, and they can't really play spells or traps because they just get wiped every turn. So if you set it up like that, there's a lot of scenarios and a lot of decks that really struggle to kind of come back from it. The deck, to just kind of go over really quickly, has the 5 Yubel cards, 3 of the basic, and then 1 of each of the kind of next level ones. And then after that, it's mostly just the Phoenix shell. You run 2 to 3 Phoenix, probably depending on how many you have. I only own 2, so I have 2 and then 1 card of the soul. You run 3 of the Fire King Avatar, you run 3 of the Fire King Island, and then you kind of have a few flex spots for things like Econs, Sphere Karibos, Treacherous Trap Hole, Fire King Avatar, Barong, if you want to go a little bit deeper into the Fire King thing. Also just any of those other good cards that work with the Phoenix or just are solid options for kind of keeping yourself alive while you get your things set up. In terms of skills, I've seen lots of different options. I've seen some people use the Yubel skill of I am Yubel. I've seen Allured by Darkness to kind of give you a little bit of card draw, another Yubel skill. Then I've also seen things like Restart. I've seen Heavy Starter to get a better chance of starting with one of those, but I don't think that works very well because then you also have a chance of Yubel, which you don't want the later forms. You could start with the early form and it can sometimes work. I was playing around with the idea of using Cyber Style so that you can use your 2 tribute summons sometimes to get stuff out that way. I've seen also people do just Draw Sense Fire or Draw Sense Spell Trap, so kind of just anything that will help you with a little bit of consistency in getting your engine going, because really once you get it going, you expect that you're going to win if you have it set up and it works. So that's where you're at, but we have seen that it is weak to certain kind of effects that can kind of disrupt the soft lock, and then once you have that soft lock disrupted, then the deck itself, the remainder of the cards aren't super strong. So usually what happens is if you can disrupt the combo, then you will end up winning. And so I've seen I've been able to disrupt it with negate effects. So if you can negate the Phoenix coming back from the graveyard, then it just stays in the graveyard and they have to wait until they get another Phoenix to kind of get the chain going. And then usually you have a decent amount of time after that because Yubel has 0 attack and they're kind of light on other monsters. So that kind of buys you a lot of time to figure out how to deal with the rest of it. So Divine Wrath is really good for that, to keep it in the graveyard. You can also use negate effects like Chalice to negate the board wipe and or the monster board wipe or the back row board wipe. If you can also use banish cards, are really strong against it. Sea Stealth Attack, Amazoness Onslaught. Those are really good because the Fire King guys who set stuff up, they need to get destroyed to do their activations. And the Phoenix also needs to be destroyed for it to come back and get its activation. And so if you can banish stuff instead, then it really puts a kink in their whole system. And then, of course, like steal effects like Econ can be powerful to get stuff out of the way. But the issue and the reason why the deck is pretty strong, I don't think it's a tier 1 deck, but I do think it's pretty strong, is that the Phoenix kind of protects the whole combo and Yubel because it destroys the whole back row. So things like Sea Stealth and Amazoness Onslaught, you have to kind of set them up a turn before to make it work. And so you have to kind of be careful in the order that you use your cards, your counter cards. Those negate effects are good for the Phoenix and Yubel. And so what you can do is you can kind of negate the Phoenix effect to help set up your Sea Stealth or Onslaught or whatever other kind of effect you'll get to negate them. if you suspect that it's their deck, one thing that I saw someone write about on Reddit, and I thought was a good tip, is that, for instance, if you're playing Amazonas, you don't want to attack into their Fire King on the first turn, because that will give them a free Phoenix activation. Just because you want to attack with the Princess to get out your monster, you can not attack for a turn, so that you make sure that your Onslaught is activated first. Because once you start doing combat with the Onslaught out, then you're banishing every turn, and then they can't get their engine going. If you just give them a free destroy effect on the first turn just so that you can get out a monster, then they will probably have Phoenix in hand, and then it'll come back and it'll destroy your Onslaught, and you're worse off for not having the Onslaught than you are for getting that monster that you got out from it. So I don't expect the deck to, well, we didn't see the deck make a big splash in tournament showings. The whole tournament meta is going to be all messed up once all these new cards come, so it'll be hard to see what's going forward. But I think the reason why it didn't is that it's naturally kind of weak to vampires, because you're sending a lot of your own stuff to the graveyard, and the vampires can punish you for that, and they can also OTK you. And it also gets a lot of splash hate from sealed tombs, and so it's kind of not well situated for the tournament meta. And like we talked about, sealed tombs just gets better for the ladder meta because it counters so many of the powerful and popular archetypes. So that's kind of all I have for this. I know that you played against it a lot. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, I beat most of the decks. I think people they didn't know how to play it, or the setup took too long. I think that's what the stumbling block was on ranked. I don't think I lost one. Some games were pretty close where they blew up my stuff, but I was able to get like an extra field from my deck because I run. There's 2 fields typically in a vampire deck, so there was a close game, but typically I did beat them either because they were unrefined or they didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah, I think that it's also like a matchup thing, because the deck is really solid against the Endless Trap Hell Amazonas.
Yeah.
If you don't play it right, and or if they get their engine going before you can get your Onslaught activated, which obviously sometimes that happens, because you have so fewer options to kind of disrupt it once it gets going, and then everything else you do takes a whole turn to get set up. And so I had a little bit of trouble with it, but it's like if your deck beats one of the main decks but just gets trounced by the other main deck, then it's going to be a very swingy climb. So I think it's a deck that people are playing because it's kind of new and exciting, and it's fun when it gets going, and it's always fun to lock your opponent out, but I don't think it'll have a lasting impact. The last thing is we have a link to a guide by Duel Links Meta. I think most likely a lot of people who are playing it have looked at this guide, just because the types of people who are playing at higher ranked PvP are the people who are the types of people who would read Duel Links Meta, but also because the lists mentioned at Duel Links Meta are similar to all the cards that I'm seeing people playing and stuff. So I think if you check that out, you can get a little bit of extra insight in addition to everything we just talked about.
Sweet. Okay, so now it's time for the Duel School, and for me to talk about the King of Game Vampire deck that I used. And, leading up to this, I haven't hit King of Games in a really long time. It was kind of the thing where the, what do you call those things? When you go into a match and you see those badges about what rank you got.
Yeah.
Mine was the last one up, so I figured I had to get it. That's all we're doing it for. That's why we're getting King of Games, just to show a rank. And, the last one I did was Gearges, so that was a really long time if you think about the meta. So I had the vampires. I bought the Empire of Scarlet twice. Zane has Cyber Style, so that all set it up for vampires to be the best deck right now. And all 3 of my decks were 22 card Cyber Style vampire decks. And don't ask me why I used 22 cards. I saw decks have 22 cards typically, and that's what I ran with. The final deck I used is unique in that there isn't an exact deck that looks like it, but it is heavily influenced by decks I saw online get King of Games. So I started out with the BLS version, which is the 22 card with 1 BLS. and I I played this through the Kaiba Cup. If you remember, the Kaiba Cup was beginning of this month, and I played that same deck, and I decided to take it to ranked, and I got all the way to the final Legend 3 match, King of Games entry match. And then, I think I talked about this last week or 2 weeks ago. It might have been just last week, but I lost 6 in a row, and I went back to Legend 1, and then I kept, I got to 2, and I got to 3, and I got to 2, and I got to 3, and 2, so I decided to make a change, and the change is where I swapped out the BLS for Jinzo. And I did this for a number of reasons. I was just losing to traps. I think that's just either it was some Weevil Mill deck. I saw some Weevil Mill decks for some reason with limiter removal. Not limiter removal. It's that card that brings back like 1,000 attack monster.
Oh, yeah.
And they just did, yeah. Limit reverse.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it's the one with the Swordsman of Landstar on it. But anyways, they kept bringing back their worms, their worm worms. I remember that match. There are those kinetic soldier decks. There are Amazonis. So a lot of traps, and even the meta decks. They all run one treacherous trap hole. The masked heroes, the fur hires, they typically run one treacherous trap hole that just gets you every time. So I decided Jinzo was the play. Taking out BLS does make it weaker against a few decks. One is Vampires. One is Amazonis. That's kind of weird I say Amazonis because you would think the Jinzo negating traps is pretty good. I think it is pretty good against Amazonis, but one thing to consider is Jinzo and Queen. Is Queen 24 or 26? I forget.
She's 24.
24?
Yeah.
Yeah, so when she's on the board, she can kill the Jinzo when they hit each other, because she can't be destroyed by battle.
Yeah.
So, yeah, BLS is stronger. The Queen BLS comes on the board, you banish the Queen, that's kind of game over. So, and Jinzo doesn't get the buff from the field. He's a machine and not a zombie. So, it's kind of a wash there, but it negates the treacherous trap hole, if anything. I put in Jinzo, and also I cut a simultaneous loss for Hey Trunade. My first version ran 2 simultaneous loss, and I saw a bunch of decks run 2 Hey Trunades, but I only have 1, so I had 1 of each. And this deck didn't last very long. I didn't really get far, and I just switched out another card. So, the final version of the deck, I cut my last simultaneous loss for Treacherous Trap Hole. And simultaneous loss is a nice card to have. It does a lot. It's hard removal when you have the field out. It disrupts their deck. It sends your own stuff to the graveyard. It does a lot, but it's kind of situational, and I don't know if it's right to say it's win more. It's good if you have a full board and you just simultaneous loss them to destroy their back row or something, or destroy whatever they just summoned. It's nice to have, but I found that the Treacherous Trap Hole was better. If I have it in my first hand, I could sometimes just win the game since the Vampires flood pretty good. It does make Vampire Takeover worse because sometimes you want to get the Vampire Takeover first and then you can't use the Treacherous Trap Hole, but it's fine. I think having 2 kingdoms in the deck made that not really an issue. So I have the deck here. I put it on Duel Links Meta. If you want to look at the final deck. And just to talk quickly about I wrote a lot about the core cards. I don't know what we should talk about, but it's good that the Vampires run 2 of the workers. When it first came out, they ran 3 retainers and 3 familiars, so that seemed like a pain, but I only had 2 each, and the final decks run 2, so good, it's cheap.
Yeah,
you only run 2. It worked out good. Retainer is better than Familiar, because you typically look for Vampire's Domain. That's one of the first cards you look for. And in terms of the bigger Vampires, there's Grace, Vamp, Grimson. I run 1 of each. Some run 2 Grace. Typically you run a lot of Grace and 1 Vamp and no Grimson, but I run 1 of each. It doesn't really matter how many you have, frankly, because you're going to search them with Familiar. You could get any one you want, so it doesn't matter. And they all have different advantages, so it's a bit of a toolbox depending on what match you're in, what the board state looks like depends on which one you're going to get. The Grace is probably the best one since you can, do the combo with the field and, slowly, decay their deck, if you will. Vamp is good against anything with more than 2,000 attack, 2,100 or more. So you steal them, you steal their big monster, and then you win the game because she could self-resurrect. So you can hit over any back row. Grimson is really good, actually. Grimson is good just for having a board. It's good against Masked Heroes, Fur Hires, the Mirror Match. Very solid. You just make sure you don't lose too much life, or you can't do your vampire tricks if you have less than 500. So that's something to consider. Samurai Skull versus Gozuki. Samurai Skull is better for many reasons. Its ability dumps something regardless of Floodgate and Paleozoic. Gozuki has a pause, so that's a difference. And leaves the field. Samurai Skull leaves the field all the time with all the banish effects, and that will get you a card from the deck right away. So Gozuki gets banished, you get nothing. So that's a difference there. Vampire Kingdom, you run 2 fields. People usually destroy your first field, so that's why you have another field. Or you could sacrifice it to get a monster on the board. Domain is one of the first cards you look for. It's the ramp card, the bright red card. You typically look for that card. Sometimes you keep it to lifesteal if you have Grimson out. Desire is the least valuable card. Typically, the 20 card decks drop it. You swap out your zombie for one in the graveyard, for a vampire in the graveyard. Typically, you run 2 econs. They're good for dumping your own guys away and stealing their guys to tribute summon. And Vampire Takeover is the trap card. And matchups, you could read all about the matchups. I don't think I have to go too much into detail, but basically, it's like which 2,000 you try to get out, depending on the matchup.
Okay. And do you have like a general sense of just what's favored and what's unfavored? You talked a little bit about that already, but
I know like the Vampire Mirror is very fun to play. It depends who has the field at first. Masked Heroes is tough because Drill Dark's a 1600 with piercing, and typically you play your guys with 0 defense. Even Samurai Skull has 0 defense, and your Retainer and your Familiar do. So they hit your defense, and you're down a ton. You're down 1600, so that sets you up to lose right away. For Hires is pretty easy, I think. Amazoness is a bit of a... Amazoness is tough. That's why I ran Jinzo. Because the decks that run a ton of traps, if you don't have... Hey Trunade is there for that reason, but if you're just running Grace, you're just doing one card at a time, like the Kinetic Soldier deck. That one was kind of tough without Hey Trunade. So you typically try to duck like a 3 back row set. Endless Trap Hell is tough, so that's another reason for that. Why I ran Jinzo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks for that. Now we all know a little bit more about how to play it. As we've mentioned before on the show, we kind of trade off a little bit on which boxes we focus on so that at least one of us gets a little bit of each one. We could talk about what's going on in it. So this was not my box. This was yours. So I do not have this deck and have never played it.
Yeah.
But it is important to know how it works for when you play against it still.
And I would not advise going all out for this box now just because 5Ds is coming. It is kind of something that's nice to do if you have the cards, but I would not advise going all out to get the box at this point just because you have to save gems for 5Ds.
Yeah, I think that's a good call for the listeners for sure because, I mean, it's going to be exciting. You want to check out all this new stuff, and there's also a pretty solid chance that it will just outclass kind of some of the stuff that happened before it, so the meta will probably shift.
Last of the Vampires.
Maybe. Yeah.
Alright. There was a promotional video for 5Ds in Japanese, and in it, 32 cards were leaked. So, we're going to take a look at some of these 32 cards.
Yeah, well, and also, do you want to, I mean, we have a link to the video. We thought it was pretty good, right? It was fun.
Yeah, it's better than the usual videos they put out, I think. But
Yeah, much better than at the very least, much better than the, God, what are they? The set promo videos. Those ones are just like full on cringe to me. Whereas this one was like, this was pretty hype. I was pretty excited about it.
yeah, it's pretty cool. Let's look at some of the cards. Yusei Fudo's Stardust Dragon. We're not sure how we're getting this. It's possible it's from the main box, but it's possible. See, it's weird if he'll give us one. Like, it's weird if he won't give us this, but it's weird if it's also in the main box, right? That would be kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, if it's so to mention for the umpteenth time, I'm not familiar with this season. Maybe I'll check it out though. I've heard it's good. Um, so I don't know if this is his like the monster he's famous for having. Then I think we probably get one in his starter deck or something, don't you?
Yeah, but then they also give it in the box. That would be kind of weird, right? Like they give it both places.
That would be weird. I think that would be the first time.
It is the card that's featured on the main box, so that is something to consider.
Yeah, weird. Okay, fair.
Maybe they're just using it to throw us off.
Yeah, maybe.
Alright, Stardust Dragon. 8-star Dragon Synchro, 1 tuner, 1 non-tuner, 2500, 2000. During either player's turn, when a card or effect is activated that would destroy a card on the field, you contribute this card and negate the activation if you do destroy it. During the end phase, if this effect was activated this turn and not negated, you can special summon this from your graveyard. It's like a Divine Wrath type ability, but it has to be a card that destroys a card. And it hits a bunch of stuff like Treacherous Trap Hole, Widespread Ruin, Vampire Kingdom, Recon, Donpa, Celestial, Galaxy Cyclone. I think the thing that is limitation is kind of weak. It's just a 2500, and you have to use 2 cards to do that. But it's something. It comes back, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's kind of powerful to have a recurring threat that protects against destroy effects. But the downside is that we have more now because Treacherous Trap Hole is very common and Widespread Ruin's fairly common, but it's still not a ton. Like, it seems like back when I used to play the physical TCG, there were a lot more destroy effects, and so this kind of version of the game, there's not as many, and so that means this protection will be less, I don't know, less applicable, and... Yeah. And then, like you said, kind of the stats aren't amazing. It takes a little bit of a setup and everything, and so I think it's not super strong, but it's on that cusp where it could be good enough, especially depending on if we get more powerful destroy effects coming up.
Junk Synchron is another signature monster of Yusei's. So Dark Warrior Tuner, level 3, 1300, 500. When this card is normal summoned, you can target one level 2 or lower monster in your graveyard, special summon that target in defense, has its effects negated. So this is a synchro setup. You play this card, you get a card from your graveyard, and then you could get a level 5 synchro or a level 4. So Junk Synchron obviously works with that Junk Warrior we mentioned. If you have another guy on the board, you could get your level 8s out. So that's what this is for.
Yeah, and that also kind of explains the conundrum, where maybe we get this guy for him. It doesn't feel like a ace monster, though. But if he's known for it, then maybe we get this guy from his starter deck, and then that's why the Stardust is in the box, or I don't know.
Yeah. I'm gonna skip Shield Warrior. Junk Forward. 3-star, 900, 1500. If you control no monsters, you can special summon this from your hand. So, something I noticed when I was looking at all these cards is that synchro type cards kind of work for ramp too. So you could just get this guy out and then play a 1 tribute monster for free. I mean for a normal summon. It's kind of like a free double summon. And yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. It seems like that use may well be the better use of it too, because I don't, maybe not, but it seems like UAs and less recently, but still applicably, the Hazy Flame, they're both using a lot of sometimes subpar cards to just cheat out that 1 tribute, And I think this might be better than some of the tools that they are currently using. So, especially since UAs are fairly big on the scene right now, I think it might just be able to slot right into there. So, depending on how many of these we get, um, I think it'd be a pretty decent card that might just have an immediate impact both from the synchros and from, like you said, that tribute standpoint.
Let's look at some of Crow Hogan's cards. His asynchro is the Black Winged Dragon, an 8 stars Dragon Synchro, 2800, 1600, one tuner or one non-tuner, one or more non-tuners. If you would take damage from a card effect, place one Black Feather counter on this card instead. This card loses 700 attack for each Black Feather counter on it. Once per turn, you can remove all Black Feather counters on this card, target one face of a monster your opponent controls. That target loses 700 attack for each Black Feather counter you removed, and if it does, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the attack lost by this effect. Very, very niche. It is a burn reflector, if you will. It reflects the attack back on a monster. They lose attack, and then they get burn damage. Something like burning land might work for this, but it seems too situational, I think.
Yeah, I agree. This one seems really weak to me. Even if you're setting it up like on your own to do that burning land situation, then you're also hoping that your opponent won't have an answer to the 2100 or lower attack monster that you have out. It seems like it's very slow setup, and then even if you do set it up, then that just means that it has a giant target on its back, and I don't think it's a very good card.
Blackwing Harmattan the Dust. Winged Beast, 800, 800. If you control a Blackwing monster other than this one, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can special summon Blackwing Harmattan once per turn. When this card's normal summoned or special summoned, you can target one Blackwing monster. This card increases its level by that monster's. So this is a synchro card as well. You special summon it, you gain levels, you ramp up to a bigger synchro.
Cool.
Basically.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Mistral the Silver Shield, a 100, 1800 tuner. When this card is on the field is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, reduce the battle damage you would take next turn to 0. So this is kind of besides being a tuner, it might have some stall usage if you're running, all Karibo deck or something.
Yeah, I saw this guy. It seems pretty solid. Plus, it being a level 2 is relevant because we just saw that you can resummon level 2s, right? Yeah, from your graveyard.
Some card does it, yeah.
So that's kind of cool. Maybe there's some synergy there.
You can mix and match the tuners, it seems, because it doesn't. These ace synchros don't really have to say you're playing Crow Hogan's cards to get this one out. So you could just kind of mix and match if you want.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking. So it seems like that's a nice little synergy. Might make it worth it.
Giblin is no good. Jin's no good. I think Elfin is good. Where is this guy? Elfin the Raven. 6-star, 2200, 1200. If you control a Blackwing monster, you can normal summon this card without tributing. When this card's normal summon, you can target one monster your opponent controls, change its battle position. So it's a very basic card, but it's a free 2200, and it changes the battle position. It's like Black Brachios.
Yeah, seems solid.
And Blizzard the Far North, 1300 0 tuner. Cannot be special summoned. When this card's normal summoned, you can target one level 4 or lower Blackwing in your graveyard, special summon in defense. So this is another ramp setup. You tuner, you get your non-tuner, you get your synchro.
Yeah. And then this guy, okay, never mind. I read it wrong. Or I was looking for him and I wasn't reading him. But okay, sounds good.
Kiza's is pretty cool. The Black Rose Dragon, 7-star Dragon Synchro, 2400, 1800, one tuner, one or more non-tuners. When this card is synchro summoned, you can destroy all cards on the field. Once per turn, you can banish one plant monster in your graveyard, target one defense monster your opponent controls, change that target to face-up attack. If you do, its attack becomes 0 until the end of the turn. So it's a very explosive effect where you get to blow up the whole board. And then you could turn something into 2400 damage.
Yeah. When it blows up the whole board, doesn't it blow up itself too, though?
I don't know. It's
Okay.
a good question.
I read it to mean that it does, but I don't know the synchro rules well enough to make a definitive ruling on that. But I think it does, so you have to choose between the two effects. But I still think both effects are pretty strong, and so I really like this card. I think this is one of the better ones that we've seen so far.
Rose Fairy, 600, 1200, level 3. If this card is added from your deck to your hand by a card effect, you can special summon it. So I forget what plant cards add stuff to your hand, but there are some, I think.
Yes.
And it's a free level 3. That's what that is. Rosaria, the Stately Fallen Angel. 8-star, 2900, 2400. Cannot be normal summoned or set. Must be special summoned from your hand by banishing 2 level 7 or higher plant monsters, 1 from the hand and 1 from the graveyard. Once per turn, you can negate the effects of all other face-up cards you control. All other face-up cards currently on the field until the end of the turn. It's a very good effect, but banishing a level 7 or higher plant, 1 from the hand and 1 for the graveyard, makes this like a meme card, sort of.
Yeah, it seems a little tough to pull off. I'm thinking it seems kind of like it might fit with the old shell from geez, what is it called? The plant deck that everyone hated.
Sylvans?
Sylvans, thank you. The Sylvans have a decent number of targets, and obviously they can get one into the graveyard, and you often have one in your hand, so I think it could work there.
Okay. Yeah, it negates the effect of all other face-up cards, so that includes spells and traps. Just the back row you have to worry about, I guess.
Yeah, it's a little bit of an interesting thing. I'm not exactly sure. What you can do, which would be just
Yeah.
even full meme, is you can gain 3,000 life, and then you can activate the effect, and then with the Aegis of Gaia, I think, activate
Oh.
Aegis of Gaia, then activate this effect, and then use Storm to clear away their back row. You keep the life that you gained, money.
Oh man, yeah, that's some deck tech right there.
That's right, yeah. That's an original
Bring your name.
on-the-fly deck tech.
Copy plant. Level 1 tuner of 0/0. Once per turn, you can target one other plant on the field that has a level. This card's level becomes that monster's level until the end of the turn. So let's say you've got. Oh, it sucks because Black Rose Dragon's a level 7, and that's an odd number, so
Yeah.
it does not work for copy plant.
Yeah, it would
Fortunately.
only work for the
Even
numbered
numbers.
ones.
Dang it. So you get level 4, you get your level 8s out. See, this is when NA math comes into consideration. Your odd synchros can't work for a copy plant.
Yeah, unless you're doing a 3 synchro summon, which is non-ideal, but you could there could be situations why it is ideal, like maybe it's easier to get out something, or I don't know the card pool, but I could see it being possible that you'd rather do a 3 than a 2 sometimes.
And you could get it out for free with Seed of Deception. It gets it out for free, not a normal summon. So there you
Cool.
go. Luna, Ancient Fairy Dragon, 7-star, 21, 3000, 1 tuner, 1 or more non-tuners. Once per turn, you can special summon 1 level 4 or lower monster from your hand. You cannot conduct your battle phase the turn you activate this effect. Once per turn, you can destroy as many field spells on the field as possible. If you do, gain 1,000 life points. Then you can add 1 field from your deck to your hand. It's a nice ability, the one where you get special summon the monsters once per turn.
Yeah, and it is also a tutor effect, so that's pretty cool. You could do it like you could start with whatever field you want, and then you can it like as one of the starter abilities, and then you can use this ability to search out the field that you actually want, and then it's kind of like a very roundabout way of having the field that you want as kind of a starter field. So
Yeah,
I don't know if that's actually worth anything, but it's
pretty
something
slow, yeah.
something that came to mind. Yeah,
The cards are not too exciting. She has. Um, I don't really like the rest of their cards.
Fair enough.
Watt Fox, I guess I like okay. It's a tuner. If this card is destroyed by your opponent's card by battle or card effect, your opponent cannot special summon a monster, activate spells, traps, spell trap effects, monster card effects for the rest of the turn. So it's kind of like a really good anti-magic arrows because it disrupts their hand as well. And you could just ram it into something.
Yeah.
Tuner, so it's like all the abilities are just gravy. It's just being a tuner, and then it does something pretty cool. So.
Yeah.
And finally, Leo, Power Tool Dragon. 7-star machine, 23-25, 1 tuner, 1 or more non-tuners. Once per turn, you can reveal 3 equip spell cards from your deck. Then your opponent randomly adds 1 to your hand. You shuffle the rest back into your deck. If this card would be destroyed while equipped with an equip spell, you can send one of them to the graveyard instead. So, we're not that high on equips. It's kind of like that spellbook card where you say, here are 3, pick 1. The equips have to be really good. They have to be like the Noble Knights to see it play, I think.
Yeah. I'm trying to quickly pull it up if I can. There's not
one here, yeah.
There's not a ton of equips that you really want to use. I think Mage Power is one of the better ones that you could just make a giant beat stick that you kind of cheated out for yourself. Or there's a couple that you can get back, which we weren't so high on at the time, but they work well with this because it protects him. So even if they're going like back on top of your deck, which is normally bad, it could be okay. Looking at them now.
There's a new one. There's a new one right here.
There's a new one right here. All right, what do you think of this one? Do you like it?
Let's talk about it. Double Tool C and D. Equip only to Power Tool Dragon or a level 4 or higher machine Morphtronic. While equipped, it gains 1,000 attack. If it attacks any effects of attack targets that apply are negated during the battle phase. Once during your opponent's turn, your opponent cannot select a monster other than the equipped monster as an attack target. An opponent's monster that battles the equipped monster is destroyed at the end of the damage step. So it's like multiple cards in one. It's 1,000 attack, it's a gravity blaster, and an Amazoness heirloom.
Yeah, sure. Just keep throwing on more abilities. It seems pretty strong, and
I like it.
I've seen a couple cards that mention the Morphtronic monsters. Have we talked about any of those? I don't.
Well, we have one right here.
Let's
see it. Find it. Here it is. Morphtronic Cellphon. 1-star, 100, 100. While in attack mode, once per turn you can roll a 6-sided die. Reveal cards from your top deck equal to the roll. And special summon 1 level 4 or lower Morphtronic from among them, ignoring the summoning conditions. Shuffle the rest into your deck. While in defense mode, once per turn you can roll a 6-sided die. Look at cards from the top of your deck equal to the roll, and then return them in the same order. So it seems like they like to roll dice.
Okay. Interesting. I'm not super high on that, but, there's obviously going to be more of them. It seems like it's kind of a sub-theme of the set, so we'll see if there's more that are relevant. The last one I want to mention, equip card, is, I think, Supervise might end up being decent.
They're not Geminis.
No, I know. But you could do something with Geminis as well, right? There's no reason why you have to go full into machines or synchros or whatever.
What's that guy? Ancient Gear Knight is a Gemini.
Yeah.
And then the good Geminis, it could just be included as well. Your Dark Valkyrias and those cards.
Yeah, the Gemini deck was hot for like a week just recently, so...
Expensive and hot.
Yes, very expensive, but hot. So maybe, I don't know, maybe you could take some of that over too if you want to make sure that you get it doesn't say 3 different equipped spell cards, so you can just make sure that you get the one that you want. So that's kind of cool.
It's true, yeah. You can play around with it.
Yeah. Cool.
So that is it. We're gonna see which one of these cards come. I assume not all of them are gonna come. This is just some random video, so we are going to get likely some of these cards. That's a safe bet.
Yeah, and that's why we didn't talk about everything we saw. That and of course time limitations. We're trying to keep the show at around the same time every week, so I think that's good for now. And next week we'll definitely talk about what we actually did get, what's looking hot, all of that good stuff.
Yeah. It's going to be a very fun time. We are very excited, and we are looking forward to the mayhem. All right. So that is it for us. Thank you for listening and talking to us on Twitter. You can listen and subscribe to this podcast wherever. Just search the Duel Assessment, and you'll find us. Please subscribe and listen. Check out the podcast and more at our website, theduelassessment.wordpress.com. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/theduelassessment. If you want to support us, we would really appreciate it. Patreon.com/duel_assessment. Send us an email with any questions at theduelassessment@gmail.com. Or you can find us on Twitter, duel_assessment, me, Green Ranger CCG, and you, 1,000 follower guy, HSW.
That's right. I'm pretty much famous now at this point. Yeah. So
get your verified checks.
Yes, come join the fold. Come follow me. Come chat with me. Whatever. It's all good times. We love it.
All right. Thanks for listening, and we will see you in 5Ds.
See you in 5Ds.